Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us for this fun conversation with alumni Sam Constance, class of 2013, and Kayla Sharpe, class of 2017. You can see a little brief title on the right there that Kayla is over at Axios as the associate editor, a new position for her recently in the DC area. And Sam is joining us from Chicago, where she does a similar role as my job for William Mary at University of Chicago, and does a terrific job. So we are thrilled to have both of them joining us, and for all of you joining us via the live Brazen event on September 22nd, we are delighted to have you join us as part of the Welcome to City event series this month, which is really there to meet the young professionals, young guard graduates of the last 10 years of undergraduate classes, to meet them where they are in their transitions to their cities and to the life that is post William Mary. And I can't think of two better alumni that have been great advisors to me in the programming I'm doing for young professionals, but also watching them grow from recent grad students to recent grad. I've known Kayla, I think, since probably her junior year of college, to where her career has led her, and Sam as a fellow colleague shortly after she graduated in the Washington Center, and seeing her career path in this short amount of time has been a pleasure as well. So I thought we would take the next 27 minutes or so to just talk a little bit about career navigation, and then kind of talk about networking to end the 30 minutes discussion, so that we as a community could network using this Brazen platform with our one-on-one chats after our conversation. So I thought, to get things started, I kind of hinted on this, that you both have relatively early in your career journey, but have made some pretty big moves and major decisions in your career early on. And I'm curious if you could just elaborate a little bit on and discuss some of the decisions and changes that you did, and what led to those changes, and maybe elaborate when you can. Obviously, tell what's comfortable in this public setting, but certainly there are things that we want to kind of get to, so that people that have similar situations or have thought of similar things feel comfortable and confident knowing that they're not alone in this, and that it's a journey. It's not an immediate sprint conclusion in your career. So who would like to start? I have, by here, I'll just go to my right is Sam. So I'll start with Sam, and then Kayla, you can follow up with Sam. Is that good?
Totally. Yes. Hi,
Thanks.
everyone. Thank you for having me, Michael. So yes, as Michael alluded to, my career journey has been, if we're like looking at a map, it's all over the place, all sorts of right and left turns. I've moved around quite a bit, and I think that has been the right decision for me. But I think one of the big questions that always comes to mind, and I know, Michael, that you were talking about here, is how do you know when it's time to make that decision? How do you know when it's time to make a move for you? And my biggest piece of advice that I have is to talk it out. If you have not already done this, this is your sign to have the career pathing conversation with your manager, with your network. And I will say the conversations that I've had with my managers about my own moves have been some of the most fruitful in helping me make career decisions. At organizations that I've worked at, they've been fairly small. Sometimes it hasn't been really clear what the formal avenues for promotion or for growth are. It's not associate to senior associate to manager, like moving up the ladder. And sometimes, even, to be quite frank, I would have to wait for my manager to quit before I would get a promotion. And so when those career paths, when that is not super obvious, talking it out with your manager has really been a big success, value add for me. And I think that when you do, they're really sympathetic to wanting the best for you and helping you make the right move. Beyond talking to your manager, talking to your network, doing a lot of learning, a lot of investigating to figure out what comes next for you and how you can make the right move. But I think that you'll find people are scared to talk to their supervisor about things like this, but it's been a real value add for me.
Terrific. And Kayla, do you want to follow up with that?
Yeah, so a little bit about my background, particularly working in journalism, which can be such a complex and dynamic field. I came to William and Mary as a freshman in 2013, knowing that I wanted to do journalism and knowing that I loved William and Mary, but knowing that the college didn't have a journalism major or program or degree or anything like that. So from the very beginning, my career was focused on networking, on finding the many William and Mary alumni who have great media and journalism careers and reaching out to them, everything from being a simple freshman and just asking like, what is your job and what do you do, to after doing internships and getting involved with the Flat Hat and doing fellowships, asking more complex questions, asking how do I get an internship, how do I get my first job. So networking and building those connection of William and Mary alumni who are so willing to take the time and energy because they remember where you were from a liberal arts background, is so important. The second thing for me was really understanding that, so often we want to jump straight to our dream job. And after having a lot of conversations with mentors of mine, I realized that that's not always so realistic. So really look at a job and understand, what is it going to do to you? What is it going to teach you? And what are your areas for growth within that company? As Sam mentioned, being able to have a manager that you feel comfortable with speaking about growth opportunities, promotion opportunities, what skills and experiences you can collaborate with other teams and grow upon, is really important. So I've definitely found in my most recent career change to Axios, I'm still in journalism, but I'm doing a different type of journalism, a different subject matter, is that whenever I'm looking and evaluating a company, I'm looking at the ways that they can help me grow, and that the way that I can use my current skills that I've already developed, but there's also something more that's kind of going to throw me for a loop that I'm going to have to push myself to achieve with the support of my team and my manager and the company at large.
Really cool and great advice. And it's having those trusted advisors, and we'll get to this in some of the questions with networking. But I think whether it's your boss or alumni, people that you can really bounce very difficult questions to, that you need some perspective on, and having that group of people to rely on is really essential to making career decisions, is what I'm hearing from both of you. So thank you for sharing those stories. And you know how often do you feel like you should be thinking about what is next? I mean, I feel like sometimes uh, a lot of the alumni of William Mary tend to be ambitious and go-getters and want to do a lot, and that's terrific, and we want them to be successful. We want you all to be successful and support that. But how much is too much to constantly be thinking about what's next, and being more present and balancing that, knowing you have a direction, but not always worrying about what's next all the time?
Think it's definitely a thing that needs to be balanced. I like to think about opportunities and I like to think of it not so much as what's next, but like, what's my next opportunity, whether that's a job, whether that's a lesson that I'm learning, whether that's a skill that I'm absorbing. So even if I'm not thinking about what my next job will be, I'm thinking about what skill is the next thing that I need to master to help me excel at the current job that I have. Every time that I meet an alumni and they tell me about the work that they're doing on experience that they had, that's really interesting to me. I'm going to want to talk to them, even if I don't want to switch into the career field. Like, I'm really fascinating to learn about them, um, what makes them click, what they've learned, and who knows, maybe 5 months, 5 years, 15 years in the future, that might lead to my next opportunity. So I'd say that it's not about maybe always looking for your next job, but it's looking for the next passionate thing that's going to make you want to excel in the work that you're already doing, and that's going to help hopefully be the next stepping stone to the next actual significant step in your career.
Totally agree, Kayla. I think the people that you meet along the way, you never know where they might lead you. I'll share one story. I was working at the William and Mary Washington Center, helping students get internships in DC. One of the internship supervisors and I developed a good relationship, and 2.5 years later, he reached out to me to offer me a job. So you never know when the people that you meet are going to have a real impact in what comes next for you in your life. And so I think that's a very important thing to keep in mind when it comes to networking. I also think I personally have never been the type of person who's, planning my next career move. I get really in the weeds with my job and I dig in and I love the work. And so I actually kind of have to force myself to take some steps back to, think about what comes next. I tend to do it at intervals throughout the year. Maybe it's at your mid-year review or at your end of year review. Maybe it's at the end of a really big project when you finally get a chance to breathe. I think that, kind of forcing yourself into some regular reflection time about where you are, what you like about the work that you're doing, the skills that you're building, the type of organization, the vibe of the organization you're at, and just kind of I force myself into it. I force myself to write it down. I force myself to think about it. And that kind of helps me decide what comes next.
Cool. And very, very great advice. I mean, I think I love the forcing. I oftentimes feel that way. I'm sometimes in this zone, and it's kind of like with resumes. People say, well, I haven't updated a resume in 10 years, and we all should know that we should be doing it every month. Just check in and add something more as like you're not applying, but just so you don't forget of the great accomplishments that you've done in your career. So I think that's along those lines is just take a moment to be proud of what you've accomplished in your work. You don't necessarily need to be looking what's next, but you need to be making sure you're inventorying what it is that you're doing so you don't forget what you've accomplished, is how I would think about some of that stuff. And speaking of sort of professional development, before we jump into the idea of networking and mentorship and stuff and things like that I want to talk on, what professional development did you do in this past 18 months of unusual work environment experience that we've all been in? What was your sort of, obviously some of it was a career change, but as far as professional development goes and what you were looking to learn and excel in, did you take anything in your own time to figure out a change?
I have an easy answer to this question. I decided to get a master's in the pandemic. So I have been quite busy, but I just decided that this was the time if I was ever going to do it. And a lot of it has been on Zoom. I'm starting in-person class on Tuesday, so wish me luck, everybody. But I really leaned into the free time that I had and to investing in myself in the last year. But I also will say, like on the very small but mighty tasks, I have started calendaring out the first 30 minutes of my day every Friday morning to just sit down and read about the things in my industry, reading the different, newsletters that I get throughout the week, publications that I really like, scrolling through LinkedIn, just kind of giving myself on my calendar the dedicated time to read and absorb about the things that matter to me and to my work. And I think that really small step has been really helpful and really impactful for me.
Congrats on the master's program and good luck with Tuesday. And I don't know how you do it in 30 minutes because you must be a speed reader, because I try to sit down and do that every so often. And then I get hooked and I'm in LinkedIn and an hour goes by.
LinkedIn is a black hole. That is a dangerous game. Yes.
Especially when you're in our field of loving
Yes.
career development and stories about, self-help, so to speak. But Kayla, yeah, anything that you did other than a major career move, obviously, but
I'd say the biggest thing is a piece of advice that my mom gave me back when I was in high school. And she said, write down all of your accomplishments. You're going to think that you remember them, but then when the time comes, you're definitely going to forget what you did 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago. So I went back through all of my emails, even back to my William & Mary email, my Google Calendar for my William & Mary email address, and went through every informational interview I've both had as the person asking questions and the informational interviews I've given to students who have reached out to me through the Career Center. And made a list of those. I've had the pleasure of speaking to so many groups, like, organizations like this and this event tonight, speaking to classes, because we're in this virtual environment, we're able to engage with people when normally you'd have to travel to Williamsburg or another city to speak on a panel or a conference. So making a list of all those speaking events really helps me to take a look back and see, like, I really have something to offer people. I've really had a great experience in my career, and I am a resource for other people. And that's something that I can bring with myself when it comes to building my confidence. To that note, I've also had the pleasure of really engaging with William & Mary a whole lot in a way that's built my leadership and communication skills. I'm a member of the William & Mary Washington Center's advisory board, as the board development committee chairman, which means that I get to really look at the Washington Center strategic growth and future and bring in alumni who I think can help us reach that future. It's a volunteer role, but it's one that I'm really passionate about because it's helping me, work on my planning skills, on my leadership skills, on my strategic planning skills. And those have all been fantastic experiences that perhaps because of COVID and because we're able to perhaps not have to meet somebody for coffee face to face, but actually able to hop on a Zoom call and have a more fruitful discussion there, have been a lot of things that I've been adding to like my own brag list, as far as experiences that I've had during COVID and quarantine.
Your involvement with the Alumni Association and all the many things that Kayla wears, it's pretty incredible what she's doing. And I think that's a really good point that you're making, is that it doesn't have to be taking a technology course online or a master's program. As it could be volunteering in something that is both rewarding and helping you build out skills and networks. And so speaking of networking, I thought we would jump to maybe the idea of mentorship, because I think that's a really important piece that you both brought up in some of the ways that your colleagues and your fellow alumni have been instrumental in your career. And I always recommend, and I know both of you carry this philosophy, to build your personal brand of a personal board of advisors, and figuring out who is your trusted group around your table that you can, at any point feel confident that you could ask them a serious question and get an honest, trusted response, and also in confidence. And really, that's important to have those people. They don't need to be your peers all the time. They can be family and friends and colleagues at different ages. Diversifying that group is really critical. I'm curious, can you talk about how you each identified and established some mentors in your life? And I think you've mentioned a few examples already, but you might have some more. And in addition to that, what makes these people great mentors? And if you have an example or two of how they provided certain advice at a point where you really needed them in your career decisions. And maybe mentees to you, like how you've been a mentor to others too. I think you both are both mentors and mentees. So.
Yeah, mentorship, as you mentioned, diversifying that group of mentors is really important because everyone who has a seat at your board of advisors table is there for a reason, and they're going to be able to give you a different aspect of perspective. For instance, there are some mentors of mine who are like really hardworking journalists. They are, experts in the field, and they are some of the busiest people in Washington. So there are people that I might only reach out to once or twice a year because I know how busy they are, and I'm going to give them the big far-reaching questions. Is this, this job going to be one that's going to lead me to a fruitful career? Should I go back to grad school? High-level questions. On the other hand, I have peers who didn't go to William & Mary, but they are in journalism. They're young journalists in Washington, D.C., in a variety of areas. They're friends of mine. I go out to the bars with them. We hang out on the weekends, but they're also people who I can gut check on more of the day-to-day personal aspects, or maybe their own personal experiences in other companies, working with other people, because I know that they're going to be honest with me and that they're going to give me that same level perspective as I've had. And then there are also mentors who I know closely. We have a great professional working relationship, and I know that they know what my goals are. I know that they can help guide me if I am gaslighting myself, if I'm doubting myself, if I'm going off the path that I've set. They can help steer me back to that. One of my fantastic mentors is Roxanne Adler-Hickey, who's the director of the William & Mary Washington Center. So I work with her professionally on the Washington Center Advisory Board, but she's somebody that I've known since I was a freshman on campus. She's somebody who's seen me doubt myself, who's seen me completely change my mind about things, and she's seen me get back on the path and has helped me get to where I am now. Just last week, I reached out to her to talk about, she helped me negotiate my salary and my benefits for my current job. She understands the things that I value. She understands some of the questions and doubts that I have. So being able to have somebody that you can text, whether it's texting them at 8 p.m. in the evening on a Friday and apologizing profusely, or somebody that you send a more formal email to on a Monday and expect to maybe hear from them in 2 weeks. Having that diverse realm of people is really great. And again, they understand what your goals are and they can help you achieve them.
Wonderful. And I agree. Roxanne's amazing. So good shout out there for a mentor that we all know. So Sam, and maybe Roxanne was a mentor in your career, but I don't know, but
She's
certainly a colleague.
Fabulous human. Yes. No, I totally echo what you've said, Kayla. I am not one of those people. I sometimes wish that I was. I'm jealous of the people who have just like formal you are my mentor, I am your mentee. Like we have this formal relationship. But I do feel like I have some key people that have just kind of established themselves or we've worked together to form strong enough relationships that I really do feel like they're the people that I turn to at major career junctures, and maybe even more than my husband, maybe even more than my family, because they're the kind of people who have seen me objectively, professionally, and can speak to, like maybe be my devil's advocate when I need it, which I think is really helpful to have. I definitely have had. And those are maybe, I would say there's 3 people in my mind that stick out. 2 of them are even former bosses of mine. And so knowing, how I work, what my style is at work, to be able to call them when I'm making a big decision and say, what do I do here? What are your thoughts? You know me well. Can you help me out? I can give an example. My husband recently, last year, I guess 2 years ago now, was offered a job in Chicago, which meant a big move from DC for us. I was trying to figure out what to do, how to prioritize work and relationships. And it was a really tough time. And so being able to call on some people who know me really well at work, who aren't clouded by professional or by personal relationships, was particularly useful for me. I also think importantly, having the not super tight group of people that I can call on and ask questions of has been really valuable for me. I'm the kind of person who's really learned a lot from my weak ties in my network. Asking them questions about whether or not I should be moving to certain organizations based on their own experiences at those organizations, based on their experiences in the city that I'm thinking about moving to. Just kind of knowing that I want to go to grad school. Let me call some people who got this master's in public policy that I'm thinking about and learn from them. So I think there's some informal relationships that develop into almost like little mini mentorship calls without needing to necessarily be a formal mentor-mentee relationship that have had really big impacts on my life.
Wonderful. I think those are mentorships, but you don't have to have a title to it. But
exactly, yes.
People that it's not just a career advice moment. It's a long-term relationship that you have cultivated over those years and respected their opinions. So I think that's really important. So the last few minutes that we have together, and by the way, if you have any questions or anything, you can put them in the discussion. If we have a few minutes before we conclude this session of today's event, we'll try to address those. But you also we will be participating in the networking portion. So maybe we'll have an opportunity to speak with you directly, and you'll have a question or two for us as well. So speaking of networking, what is the best advice you've gotten? And I, intentionally separated this from mentorship. I think networking can lead to mentorship and mentors and mentees, but I think networking is that word that scares people or creates this awkward assumption that you're kind of not using someone's expertise or asking something which is not comfortable for a lot of people. But it really is a great way to look at your interest professionally and how you can mutually accomplish something together if you find the right types of people to network with. And I'm just curious, what advice have you received around the art of networking or put into practice that you have found most successful? Kind of what networking relationship should look like in your opinion? And then how often do you keep in touch with your network? Do you have any methods or advice to help make it less awkward? I know, Sam, you did a great presentation back in Professionals Week earlier in the February with me, and it was a great session about making it less awkward in 10 minutes.
I think it was called Make Networking Less Awkward, because networking is awkward, yeah.
So if you have one tip from that you like to share in the time that we have, but so I'll throw that maybe Sam, do you want to take this one first and then
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think I'll share one piece of advice and then one tool that I recommend. From the advice side, I would say create the environment that's going to make you most successful. You know yourself. Are you an extrovert? Do you thrive in a big room full of people with all the buzzing noise around? Are you maybe the kind of person who prefers a one-on-one conversation in a coffee shop? Do you want to be behind your computer because it's nice to be able to close it and take a break? Do you want to be in person? Are you the kind of person who really needs to over prepare? If so, create that arsenal of topics that you can ask people about. So reflect on yourself, and there's a lot of environments for networking. Put yourself in the environment that's going to make you most successful. And then the one tool that I would recommend, I have a Google Drive it's called like Sam's Job Drive or something like that. I have everything, all my resumes, cover letters, job descriptions that I've applied to, all the above. It also has a gigantic spreadsheet of networking contacts, notes from past calls with them, timelines of when I most recently reached out to them, so that I can make sure that I'm staying on top of things. When you remember that thing that they said last time you talked about how they were having a baby, that is so impactful. That means so much to them. And you might not have the greatest memory. I don't. So I keep notes, and people think that I am really thoughtful, and it makes me look good, even though it's just all written on my Google spreadsheet. So think about, being a little bit of a scientist, taking some notes as you're going through your networking. And I will pass it off to Kayla.
I'll intercept with a little advice. If you want that Excel file that Sam is thinking of, you can literally take your contacts from LinkedIn and download that data that they have, and then you have a starting point. And then you can kind of see all of the message history and things like that too. So it's kind of a neat starting point if you're behind on that to-do list. And certainly LinkedIn serves as a CRM for many if you don't want to have the Excel file. But Kayla, your turn. Sorry for the interception there.
No apologies needed. I'd say the biggest thing is to kill them with kindness. I always think that flattery is a great way to break the ice with people and get into a comfortable relationship with them, but not like flattery, just like you're tossing compliments out there that have no meaning. Find the connection between the two of you. Maybe you were in the same major at campus. Maybe you lived in the same city. You have a connection on Facebook or a connection on LinkedIn. Find that and then find the good thing about it. I call it like positive bragging. Nobody likes it when you meet somebody and they're like, throwing shade or like complaining about something or being negative. Find that person that you have in connection and be like, oh, you were roommates with so-and-so, or you work with so-and-so. Aren't they great? I was at a networking event with them and they were so kind, or I was at a wedding with them. When you are put into a position where there's positivity and you're talking about the positive aspects of an experience that you guys shared or a person that you both know, that's going to automatically cement you in their head as a positive connection, as a positive person to talk to. So I'd say that that's the big thing, is like find that connection that will bring you two together. And that kind of goes to Sam's point of they're going to remember you and you're going to remember them. You're going to remember the baby that they had, the big move that they had, the promotion that they had, and they're going to connect you with like those positive aspects of their life. I'd also say is that networking doesn't have to happen, and mentoring doesn't have to happen in the formal context. There have been times that I'm perhaps, volunteering on a William & Mary board or with another organization, and there's another alumni who says or does something that I find really impressive. Even though we're not formal mentor-mentee, also reach out to them and say, do you have like 15 or 20 minutes to chat about that financial presentation you put together? Like, I'm so bad at putting numbers into, actionable items and, quantifying a bunch of data. Like, I don't expect you to teach me how to do this in 15 minutes, but like, I was just really impressed with how you presented that. I'd love to just pick your brains about how you got so good at that. They weren't expecting you to reach out, and they were expecting you to reach out, maybe ask some questions about the financial statement that they put together. They weren't expecting you to find that as a learning opportunity. So I'd say that those spontaneous opportunities that leaves them with a good feeling from having spoken to you and feels like they actually like, that financial presentation I did not only share that financial information, but like it taught somebody something. I taught somebody something is always a good place to be at.
Wonderful tips. Well, I realize that we are now at that half an hour point, so we probably should conclude. I will just leave with, I do have a few more questions, but I'm going to kind of wrap it up with one final question, and maybe it's a short answer moment. So we always tell people, like, you never know who knows who, and you kind of alluded to this earlier. Just be open in your chats tonight and in the future when you're networking and doing these events. We do these online networking events every month. So, if you like what you're experiencing, you can certainly come back. We won't always have a intro session. We'll sometimes be a full hour of networking, and it's one-on-one, and get to know each other, learn about what you all are doing each professionally and what your interests are. And I'm sure you'll teach each other something, and you might have connections for them, and to open up new connections for yourself. So, with that, what question do you like to ask in an informational conversation that kind of has been the most helpful? And what do you avoid asking?
I avoid anything that you can find easily on the internet. If it's Googleable, it's not the question to ask somebody. And I would opt towards any question where you're getting to ask someone about themselves. People love to talk about themselves. And so that will just leave them feeling like, okay, I'm confident in this conversation because I know how to answer this question. I can talk about myself. I can talk about my career journey. So don't talk about the specifics of the company. Talk about the things that, only that one person can share with you.
Awesome. Thank you.
I also don't like to go too broad. If I'm speaking to a journalist, I'm not going to ask them, like, tell me about journalism. How do you get into journalism? Like, say you meet Anderson Cooper on the street. You're not going to ask him that because him talking about his entire journalism career is like way too overwhelming. That could be a 3-day conversation. Instead, really hone in on the aspects of their career that only they can talk about, as Sam said. So ask how they made that recent, switch from sales to finance. Ask them what is it like being a journalist in San Francisco specifically versus being a journalist in New York or DC or elsewhere on the East Coast. Those are the things that are going to really make them stop and think and be insightful, and that's really going to make you stand out.
Awesome. Well, this is always a pleasure speaking with both of you. I wish we had a full hour. It sounds like we have more. It was more questions than I thought, but glad we got to cover mostly everything I think we wanted to cover in my outline here. But I hope everyone has fun networking and chatting. Thank you both for all you do for William & Mary and being great examples of young professionals doing amazing work in your respective fields and making a difference in so many people's lives. So keep up the great work. We'll keep being proud of your accomplishments, and good luck with master's program and your new job and all the things ahead of you both. Looking forward to staying in touch and doing this again soon.
And I'll just say, find me on LinkedIn if you want to connect with me. If you ever want to set up a call with me, this is an open invitation. I'm in.
Same here. I have a motto that's "There's no stupid questions." Any question that you are possibly asking is one that I've probably also asked to somebody in my career. So any questions, feel free to get in touch.
And I mean, I of course also echo that. And if you want, just put a little note in the LinkedIn connection request, because it has helped me understand the connection points. But I love speaking with William & Mary alumni anytime. So have a great rest of the hour, and thanks so much for joining us, and enjoy the fall.
Thank you.